National Security Advisor, House Intelligence Chairman Mike Rogers, and Nicholas Burns, former Undersecretary of State and current Harvard University professor. So, you all know what the story is. It does seem to me that we had a clash of mottos. The U.S. doesn't negotiate with terrorists, leave no man behind.
Well, I mean, obviously, we should be happy for the family. They've gotten their loved one back. That's very, very important. The methodology and what we used is very troublesome. Remember, Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb...
And by the methodology, you mean?
Negotiating with terrorists.
Okay.
Remember, this was an individual who was held by a terrorist group in another country, Pakistan. We know that to be true. Across northern Africa, the #1 way that Al-Qaeda raises money is by ransom, kidnapping and ransom. We have now set a price. So we have a changing footprint in Afghanistan, which would put our soldiers at risk for this notion that if I can get one, I can get 5 Taliban released. And the problem is the way we're changing our footprint means we get less intelligence. That's already starting to happen, and we'll get more degradation of the ability to collect intelligence to even stop force protection efforts for our soldiers. That's why so many of us are so concerned about what really is a break with U.S. policy of not negotiating with terrorists.
I think some people would argue that Ronald Reagan did negotiate with terrorists when he negotiated with Iran and the whole Iran-Contra thing. But nonetheless, in this current day, General, is this troublesome to you in the sense of, do you believe it puts U.S. military folks at risk, or Americans in general?
Well, I think, first of all, I identify with the Congressman's feelings about the family. This is something to be celebrated, and we're really happy for them. But you know, we will have to talk about what this means in terms of risk.
So talk about it. What is the risk now?
We are. I mean, it is. You know, people will judge this in different ways. But in my lifetime, Americans are always at risk. I mean, we're more at risk than any other country, and if they think that the value of taking action against Americans and holding Americans is going to somehow help them achieve their goals, and they're going to do that. So, you know, I think Qatar plays an important role here. These are bad people, and they do have blood, American blood, on their hands.
The Guantanamo Bay detainees
it's absolutely important that now that we're embarked on this path, we make sure that these people, that Qatar helps us make sure that these people do not return to the battlefield.
Look at this from the point of view of diplomat, because it's not just U.S. soldiers who are out there. As we all know, being a diplomat can be a dangerous position. So when you look at it from that point of view, do you think that this makes being an American riskier in this day and time?
Well, it could. And first of all, we rejoice in the freedom of Bowe Bergdahl to go back to Haley, Idaho. That's a great thing. But this is a substantial risk for the administration, because I was told as a young diplomat, we were going out to the Middle East 30 years ago, if you're taken hostage, we're not going to negotiate for your release. I agree with that policy. All of my contemporaries have. It's been U.S. policy for decades. We don't want to reward or encourage terrorists. And the problem we've got is we're still in Afghanistan. We still have troops there. The president's just announced they'll be there for at least 2 more years. And we've seen now that, you know, that Al-Qaeda core has metastasized into these affiliate groups that the Congressman referred to, the Chairman referred to. In North and West Africa and the Middle East, you have all these more virulent, if it's possible, than Osama bin Laden terrorist groups. We don't want to see our diplomats or our soldiers put in that situation.
General, there is also leave no soldier behind, leave no man or woman behind. Can one make a distinction and say, well, this was, as I think we heard Susan Rice try to do earlier, which is we were in the middle of the war, they had one of our soldiers, and she didn't ever say we're negotiating with terrorists, but obviously, even if you put Qatar in the middle, the U.S. was negotiating with the Haqqani network, with the Taliban. It kind of seems to me that there's a difference that they're trying to make between diplomats and a soldier in the performance of duty at a war.
Well, Afghanistan is going through a major transition right now, and how Afghanistan turns out is extremely important. And at some point, most conflicts do resolve themselves in an exchange of prisoners at the end of the conflict. We are not there yet, although we're going to be substantially reduced, but we'll still have 10,000 or so Americans exposed. And, you know, people this will have to play itself out to see exactly how it happens, how it happens in terms of the security of those people.
But the truth is, we weren't really ever at war in Afghanistan against Afghanistan or Pakistan or any country. We were at war with a group, expanded to groups, but nonetheless, in the world of asymmetric warfare, where we are fighting groups and not nations, we used to do prisoner exchanges with nations all the time when we were at war with them. Why not now?
Because, again, the Haqqani Network is a terrorist organization. It is not a nation state. They don't control government services or anything that even closely resembles. But we were at war with them. Yes? Well, we're at war with anyone that declares war against the United States, which is al-Qaeda and its affiliates and those who provided resources
right, and
to do bad things. If
you're at war with this group, as you would be with a state, you know, with Germany or, you know, in the past, don't you of necessity have to negotiate a prisoner exchange?
No, here's where I disagree completely. Now, we have other means to use. And remember, they came to Congress about a year ago and said, we're thinking about doing these negotiations. And by the way, they didn't get a very warm reception from either party in the national security committees. They said, this is fraught with trouble. Well, so this all of a sudden comes a year later. They didn't notify Congress. I think they violated the law in 2 different places here. Why? Is because this is morphing into different places. So an al-Qaeda affiliate in now Africa looks a lot and functions a lot like the al-Qaeda affiliates operating out of the tribal areas in Pakistan. You can't, if you negotiate here, you've sent a message to every al-Qaeda group in the world that says, by the way, who are holding U.S. hostages today, that there is some value now in that hostage in a way that they didn't have before. That is dangerous. And so our argument is, listen, we don't fight this like we would fight a nation-state war. You can't. And you shouldn't negotiate with terrorists for this very reason.
I want to get back to something you said, but I want to get Nick, before we close out this first segment, and ask you, so much depends on whether Qatar can deliver in the corralling of these 5 men. Do they have the wherewithal? You know, they won't tell us what the restrictions are other than they can't leave Qatar for a year. But it's unclear to me, and you know, Susan Rice talked about certain restrictions, et cetera, et cetera. Do they have, is this a country equipped with the kind of surveillance or watchfulness that could handle 5 folks that have some blood on their hands? Well,
this is a key question, because the deal, if you favor this, you're going to have to understand that Qatar is going to be able to keep these people under wraps, in essentially house arrest. They won't be able to contribute either by phone or in person to the battlefield because our soldiers are there. It's a very small state, Qatar, a tiny state. I'm not sure they have the apparatus to be able to contain 5 people like this. And it would be, I think it would be helpful to know from the administration what are the conditions that they understand.
I tried.
They've agreed to.
Right, right. Apparently those are part of the secret of their containment, and they wouldn't tell us. We do want to continue our conversation. I want to wrap up about this. I've also got a couple of questions about the VA that I think you all could chime in on. We'll be right back.